Mr. President, I rise to speak on this very important amendment to this bill. This bill, Mr. President, is the Constitution Amendment Bill 2020. Now, what this bill seeks to do, similar to other bills that were here in this chamber today, is to regularize a situation that would have been around for quite some time. Under the Pensions Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2004, public officials from June 1st, 2005 would have retired at a particular age. And that age varied, but it was a regularization of that. And what was to occur was that by 2018, all those public officers would have retired at 67. Now, this bill seeks to ensure not only that does that occur, but that there would have been some individuals who did not fall quite within that ambit, because within the Constitution, they had to retire at a different age. And this amendment would not have covered them. And two of those individuals were the Director of Public Prosecution and the Auditor General. Now, they were covered under the Constitution. So, hence, the reason for the amendment to this constitutional provision in order to bring them in concert with the other public officers within the public service. Because clearly would not want to have disparate situations amongst public officers where that can be avoided, and that would then not have any type or level of confusion there. Now, it also seeks to regularize the compulsory age of retirement, which is basically what we're speaking about, so that not only will these individuals be able to then retire at 67 and not at 62 as currently exists. It also has moved all of the public servants, the first Act, the Pensions and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2004, because those officers would have moved to everyone to retire at 65, and then, as I said earlier, by 2018 to 67. So what I'm really trying to say, Mr. President, is everyone would then retire now with this amendment, this constitutional amendment, including the two individuals I just spoke about, at 67. So I think everyone knows the function of the Auditor General. The Auditor General is a position within the public service that I think is quite familiar to most people, especially those who have to work or deal with the public service. The Auditor General, I think that position over the years, some people have even referred to it as almost as a watchdog type situation, where the Auditor General, because they're tasked with ensuring the prudent and responsible spending by government departments, including statutory entities. We have oftentimes seen and heard from the Auditor General both positive and negative aspects of how government departments, divisions, and statutory entities have sometimes spent the money entrusted to them by the taxpayers of this country. So clearly, it is a position named in our Constitution. It is an important position. It has, from time to time, been a revelation for many people as to what some entities have done, where that information may not necessarily have been in the public domain without the Auditor General's reports that we get a chance to see every financial year. Now, the Director of Public Prosecution is also a similar position, Mr. President. I think most people, certainly those who have to interface with the legal profession, the court system, or in any aspect of the justice system of this country, will be quite familiar with what the Director of Public Prosecution does. Another extremely important position within the government structure, and certainly extremely important within the legal field. Now, the Director of Public Prosecution, that post, as I said, if this amendment was not done, they would have to retire at 62. And we certainly don't want legislation that is not in concert with each other, and there's any kind of disparity as to what obtains. That is not good process. And so in order to tidy up this process and to ensure that these two posts are now within this structure, this pensionable structure of 67, that is the reason for this constitutional amendment. Now, no constitutional amendment is ever to be taken lightly, because once you amend your constitution, it's something one should look at. And so certainly I know that my colleagues would have looked at this here quite closely, and they would have seen that there was a disparity between the retirement age under the National Insurance Scheme for these individuals and their retirement age under the Constitution. And why is that not good? For obvious reasons. You can't have a retirement age here and then your national insurance age is here, because then there's a clear gap, a clear, it needs to be synonymous so that one is not disadvantaged in any way. And so, as you know, that the amendments to the Pensions Act, Cap 275, we know that this is an absolute necessity to bring these two posts in line with what their other benefits would be at retirement. Now, I know that many people look at the whole retirement and pensions as it exists. And there's a lot of debate about what has been done in the past and who did what and what was done and what people should have got before and all of those things. And they're reasonable debates and reasonable comment. So it's not that I'm here to speak about today. What I'm here to speak about today is what needs to be done that is correct. And our belief is that this is the correct way to go in order to regularize a situation that needs to be regularized. I think that pensions are a serious issue. It needs to be taken seriously. People have all kinds of opinions on pensions. I have my own opinion on pensions like anyone else. So, but at the end of the day, people have a right to their pension, a right to get their pensions in a timely manner, a right to get their pensions at retirement, and not have to wait till whenever a particular age requirement is met to get it, if they are able to retire at a different age. Because pensions, really and truly, are things that people have worked and contribute to for a good part of their working life, which is what makes them eligible for many pensions. Not all, because we do have old age pensions, but most pensions will be determined on, one, what type of job you had, your length of service, and all the other variables that would come into play with your calculations as to what determines the amount that you should receive. And it's no different in this situation. It's no different here. And we certainly would not want to have two important positions such as these, the Auditor General, Mr. President, and the Director of Public Prosecution, where these things were not regularized and brought in line with the rest of the public service. So, just to recap, Mr. President, the compulsory age of retirement for the Auditor General and the Director of Public Prosecutions needs to be harmonized with the retirement age under the National Insurance Scheme, as is in the case of other public officers, by virtue of the 2004 amendments to the Pensions Act, Cap 25, and that the Constitution should be amended to effect the change in the compulsory age of retirement for the Auditor General and the Director of Public Prosecutions to move it to 67. Now, I'm sure there will be quite some comment on this. These issues always bring comment from many quarters, especially those where some people have a set view on how one should proceed with the rights of workers. But we believe that this is the right way to go, and that this is the way that we should be looking at this situation, and that we, under no circumstance, would want to disadvantage anyone, and we want to make sure that where possible, that people within the public service all have the synonymous rights when it comes to such a important issue as their pension. And with these few opening comments to this amendment to this bill, Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a second time.
I recognize President Franklin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have a few preliminary questions before I get into what I wanted to say. This bill says, and the long title is supposed to alter the Constitution. I don't know if that's what we're doing. I think we're amending the Constitution. Altering the Constitution does not have a specific amendment to it. When you are altering the Constitution, like when we had the Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act, you did not, you took away a person's rights to property. So the Constitution was altered to the effect to give persons, to take away their property without breaching the Constitution. Here we are amending the Constitution. So this act should say that this act, and say a bill entitled an act to alter the Constitution. This is an act to amend the Constitution. That's the first thing. And Now, do I support this amendment? Yes and no. But because I fell up for a number of reasons, and I'll go through them gradually. This amendment this is not the first time this amendment has seen the light of day in Parliament. When the Barbados Labour Party was in opposition, they failed to support this amendment. It's an identical amendment, nothing changed. And I addressed that point to say that we should not be politicizing things like this. This is not a political issue, it should not have been treated in that way. But the opposition abstained and did not allow the last government or the last administration to pass these amendments. I just want people to remember that that is what they did. All right? My next concern is that this amendment does not say that it applies to the current holders. You are changing the retirement age, but when those people came into office, their retirement ages were fixed when they took up the job. If you're going to change their retirement ages, you have to give them an option to go into the new arrangement. This act does not say so. So I'm wondering if it is deliberate that you don't want the current holders to go on, but the people who come after them will go on to 60 because under the new arrangement, the new people retirement ages will be 67. And I want that clarified before we do anything because I know I've been following pension amendments for years, and to my knowledge, they have always given the people who were already in the jobs the option to go under the new arrangements. Even in the last arrangements in the Pension Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 2004, the retirement ages went up to 67 in the end. But it says, but you didn't get an option form to sign on this occasion. It says, your retirement age remains the same. But if you want to continue to work, you can do so. So those people who, when they reach retirement age and opted to continue going, there was nothing to stop them because the Act says you can go on. Prior to this, people were given option forms and said, well, look, you now have to retire, you want to retire at 66 or whatever age it may be, you sign here to say yes. There is no such provision in this legislation to affect the current holders. So it would mean to me that their retirement ages are fixed when they were appointed to the jobs, and this legislation has done nothing to address them. So I don't know. So let's check to see if that is what you want to do, or it was just an oversight. I prefer to be generous and say it was an oversight, and I'm always generous. I said I was a bit conflicted. I said, yeah, I support yes or no. And the reason why, we have, to my recollection, about 13 or so different pensions act in Barbados. Everybody had one. You had the Pensions Act for civil servants, you had the Teachers' Pensions Act, you had an act for casual employees, you had Public Employees Pensions Act, you had the Widows and Children's Pensions, you had an act to deal with parliamentarians, you have one, and the judges, their pensions are dealt with under the Judges' Remuneration and Pensions Act. We have the soldiers, they get one under the Defense Act. There are an array of pensions, and all of them have different conditions. And I believe, sir, that it's about time that we recognize that everybody who gives service to the country, they should get some sort of retirement award for it. And it shouldn't be the kind of snobbish way that we have dealt with it in the past. I believe the pension conditions, if you work for 10 years, you get a pension based on the salary that you were getting or whatever. But no, it doesn't work like that. We have, under the Pensions Act, Cap 95, your retirement age or the pension age, and I can speak to pensionable age, is now 67. We now know that under the Constitution, these two officers were 62. But the age at which an MP gets a pension is 50. You know, and I got to speak about that. You know, over the years, pensionable age went up from 55 to 60 to 65 to 67. The only one time pension age came down was in 1989 when the then administration changed it from 55 to 50 to accommodate parliamentarians. I think to this day it's a crying shame. You were not in office in 1989, so I'm not blaming you. But you didn't oppose it either. You know? I mean, the Bible did, but I didn't oppose it either. So an MP gets a pension at age 50. If he leaves Parliament, he gets a pension. If a public officer leaves the public service, his pension is stored until he reaches retirement age. No. If an MP leaves Parliament, he's 50 years old, he gets his pension. So I'm saying, what is good for the goose should be good for the gander. And if it is wrong for a public officer to get his pension at 50, then it should be wrong for an MP to get his at 50. But worse yet, it gets worse. A public officer gets his pension, a full pension, after 33 and a third years. That's 400 months. An MP gets his full pension, 2/3 of his salary, after 12 years. I am speaking about MPs. All of you, except senators, we don't get a pension unless we hold an office like parliamentary secretary or minister or president. But after 12 years, you qualify for the same pension that a civil servant will qualify for in 33 and a third years. Something must be wrong with that. No, there are different types of all this public service. The fellow who picks up the garbage, he's given public service. He's given a level that he can give it at. And the type of service that you give here, MPs should be people who could take care of themselves. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't come here and take care of me. So you should be making your own pension arrangements. But no, you make these nice, well, almost the nicest pension arrangements ever for yourselves. And mind you, it isn't only in Barbados, they've done it in the other Caribbean countries too, you know. I'll give an example of which even the best. Any person who becomes prime minister, who is appointed prime minister, only has to demit office. Only has to demit office. And he gets a pension from the day after. So if you're appointed prime minister today, you can go there, Governor General, tomorrow. I ain't born with this thing, you know. And you are pensionable from whatever age. So if you had a prime minister who came in at 30, they will get and serve 1 day, they will get a pension till they die at 2/3 of the salary a prime minister should have gotten. Yeah? So that's what I'm saying to you. I'm conflicted with all these pension arrangements and stuff. Now, a person who works at a statutory board and who is covered under the Statutory Board's Pensions Act, his pension his full pension is after 40 years.
After,
40 years. So an MP gets his pension, a full pension at 12 years. Mind you, he gets a pension of half his salary at 8 years. A civil servant gets 20% after 10 years of his salary. After 10 years, so we should get about 20%. So the arrangements that we are doing, that we have done over the years, it says, oh, you people really don't matter. But the most heinous part of it all was in 1975, again, you notice that the bad things happen at particular times. In 1975, the then government decided that public servants shouldn't get 2 pensions because public servants were entitled to a pension based on their service to the government, which was valued at the time about 25% of their salary. Because if you were working in government on contract and you're not pensionable, you get a contract gratuity. So your job is actually worth, the job as the public office that you hold is actually worth more than you actually get because some is supposed to be set aside for you. 25% actually. Because if you were lent out to some other entity, you're seconded then, that entity has to pay 25% of your salary into the treasury to maintain your pension. So you see, you have a situation where public officers, even though people say it is not a contributory pension, they pay you less money so as to accommodate that, but people don't recognize it. And you are also paying for a national insurance pension because you contribute to that as well. But the government in their wisdom said, no, if you come into the service after the 1st of September 1975, your pension from the treasury will be reduced by the amount of money you get from national insurance, except you are an MP, a judge, or Governor General. And the reason why the judge, I understand that, because you cannot change the judge's terms and conditions to his detriment, but you could have changed it for people coming in. So you could bring the new judges, you could have done it too. And if MPs sit down and hear and the place below and say, this is wrong, you shouldn't be getting 2 pensions, then they shouldn't be getting them either. So a public servant who joins his public service in May last year will get 1 pension. After serving 10 years, he will get a fifth of what he's entitled to. An MP who joined the service, the government in May last year, after 8 years, he will get half of his salary. And then also, he will get the national insurance pension that MPs denied civil servants, or rather public workers, because it didn't only go off the civil service, it went to people who work at statutory boards and everything else. So, why I am complaining about all this thing, I don't mind if you raise the pension age, but if you raise everybody else, raise yours too. You know? It is only fair. And if you are thinking that your pension, you should get half of your salary after 8 years, then you should say other people should get half of theirs at 8 years. But it is not only them. People tell me the MPs work hard, so you gotta give more benefits to them. I don't know. MPs are working hard. Oh, a whole bunch of motor browns. Just all they do is talk. They don't really do a lot of work. You have a policeman who go out there hunting criminals and all kind of stuff and running them down. And you have, if a constable is not promoted to sergeant or wherever else you go to, he has to remain in the service, and the commissioner can delegate that fellow to go out there and run down criminals. At age 66 and a half, up to 67. Okay, there. How many times do you expect to see a young fella fleet of foot turning on the road and a 55, 60-year-old policeman running behind him? Ain't gonna happen. So I believe that if MPs should get their pensions early, qualified candidates like police should get theirs early. like fire service. You know, you're going up and building to take a fellow out in the fire service, you know, and you come down the ladder and the earth where they say, you drop the fellow and come down. So people in those professions should be given the option to go home early on a full pension. You shouldn't be like the policemen, firemen, some even prison officers work until they are 67, unless they want to, unless they feel fit, because me, I think I could work to 90, you know? But everybody don't feel like me. They got some people who cannot physically do the job, but MPs think it to themselves and say, boy, at 50, I burn out. Mind you, they turn around, and they don't know if they do this to the soldiers to keep them loyal or whatever. But soldiers get their pension after 15 years. Full pension after 15 years at age 45. So if a soldier should get his pension at age 45, what about the policeman? What about the prison officer? What about the fireman? So it's time that we put pension arrangements in place. One Pensions Act, that covers everybody. I was writing out the Pensions Act. Public Service Pension, the Pensions Act, Cap 25, 384, Statutory Boards, Retirement Allowances, Legislative Service Act, Pension Prime Minister Act. The Prime Minister is the legislator, so what you got the Prime Minister Act and Act for the other people? Why? Because the Prime Minister gets his in one day.
Oath, after the oath.
Pardon?
After the oath.
Yes, anything, yeah, after he take the oath. If he takes the oath and go down and run his side and he finish with that, he's pensionable. Those things don't make sense, but it is the law of Barbados. You know, if somebody appoint me Prime Minister today and they decide, well, look, I down with that. I remember, like, for instance, judges. Yeah. Judges get their pension, full pension after 20 years judicial service. And that does not mean that you have to be 20 years as a judge. Because if you came into the public service as a clerical officer, you studied, and then you went to law school or whatever else, and then you come back. And so all those years, let's say you spend 20 years in the public service, and then you come in at the junior levels, and then somehow you become a judge. All those 20 years, for every 3 years you spend, count as 2 for judicial service. And I remember a case in one person, when he found out, when the act was passed, he worked up to the very day of 20 years and retired. Not another day. But a judge gets his full salary. All you do is change the thing I taught from salary to pension. No difference. You get your full salary after 20 years judicial service. That's what I'm saying to you, that our pension arrangements are snobbish. They do not value people's service. They think, well, if you are the lower level, you don't really matter. So they don't give you much, or they don't give you anything at all. Because, again, the dams again, they abolished pensions for casual employees. Thankfully, Owen Arthur, in his wisdom, got rid of the casual employee jobs and made them all public officers. So then they were entitled now to pensions under the Pensions Act. But again, if you were a casual employee and you work they allow you to work to 65, but they only count your service up to age 60. All of these things happen when the casual employees, with the people who work at MTW and those kind of people. So you treated people badly because you didn't value them. You know, and the thing that bothers me is that, you know, these are the same people who rush out there and wear the blue and the red shirts and support you and then when it comes to giving them benefits, you tell them all these nice things, but treat them badly. You know? It is against this background that even while I am on the edge of supporting this legislation, I I have to point out that there is need for reform in the pension arrangements in Barbados. It is too snobbish. You know? Watch. I made a note. Judges get their pension after 20 years. Prime Minister after 1 day. Police, 33 and a third. Soldiers, 15 years. Public officers, 33 and a third. Statutory board employees, 40 years. You know? We need to fix that. And we need to value people. You know, it is not easy working all your working life, and then when you come out, you realize that you are living what people like to call a life of genteel poverty because the pensions don't cut it. And one of the things that really bothers me about the pensions is that, again, the last administration started taxing them, your pension. You know, I remember reading the debate, in 1971, the debate it was, in the budget debate, where the then Prime Minister said it would be unconscionable to tax pensions when you tax the national insurance pensions, when you already tax the contributions. But they came in the last administration and did exactly that. You have paid tax on your contributions. So when you're getting back some of those contributions in the form of a pension, they tax you again. Double taxation. So Senator Moore, speak to your Minister of Finance and tell her that that is wrong. And our Minister of Finance, she is our Minister of Finance. We want me to do. You know, so I don't. But look, she is our Minister of Finance. She's our Prime Minister. We can't take that away from her. At least not yet. You know. You know. So I speak to her because I don't have the kind of connections or influence that will get her to notice these things. You know, she won't pay me any money, but I think she will hear you because that is wrong. But that's an aside because I'm not really dealing with the pension. It was just dealing with the. Okay. You know, that is not really dealing with the issue, but something has to be done about that. It is wrong. I am sure no one in here would agree that you should tax pensions. Having paid income tax on the contribution that you paid in, and then you're paying taxes again on the money you get, you're taxing that money twice. Because that money is your savings, you know. It is the national insurance and whatever is a form of compulsory savings. It is money that if you put it down in the bank. So when you're getting it back, and some people, you know, pensions is such that some people are going to get back a hell of a lot more than they ever put in, and some will get back less because some folks are going to die a couple of weeks before they retire. You ain't get none. But he will make up for the fellow who will, well, that's good for him. And that is what your legislation provides. That is what your legislation provides for. As a matter of fact, no, you're talking about it, you see. If I were a public officer and I left the public service, you know, and I started to get my pension, whatever form, because I'm medically unfit, but then they recover a little bit. And I come back, they don't recalculate my pension, you know. Like for you, Senator Walker, you're a pensioner now. But when you demit office now, they will work out your pension based on what it would be now. And then up your pension. You know, you people take that's what I don't like about MPs. They look out for themselves and only themselves. No, that is why I'm not sad when you get locked up in New York or wherever else that will happen. You know, but it is colossal greed that causes things like that. So don't fall into that trap, please. You know, I know you wouldn't, but you know, I'm speaking for the others. Because you got so much money, you don't need to do that. You know. I want to touch on something now that a lot of people might not be aware of. Are you aware that the drivers at the transport board are the only people who are paid from the public purse that do not get a pension from the government or a gratuity or anything from the government. They're the only ones. Yes. No, they have no private pension, nothing. Every administration has promised, including this one, the drivers at the transport board, that they will get a gratuity and a pension. If those same workers had left the public service and gone and work, left transport board and go and work at MTW, Water Authority, or any place else, making roughly the same money, at the end of their working lives, they could walk home with $90,000 as a gratuity. When you leave transport board as a driver, you go home with your last pay packet. And every administration, I said, including this one, thinks that that is wrong. This one promised, but then they will argue, we can't really go and fulfill these promises because they're the IMF watching we, and we ain't got a lot of money. But you have to consider doing something about them. Because, sir, there are people like Transport Board that get pensions, The monthly pay people get pensions. The general managers, if they are not on contract, they get pensions. The whatever titles you have in there, they get pensions. But the drivers, as a matter of fact, you can't have a transport board without drivers. They're the most important people in there, Because if they don't drive the buses, you can have 10 general managers, enough accountants. Pardon? How many represent? I don't recall now, I'll tell you later, but I represent a good few of them. But they don't get anything. So that needs to be fixed. It is unfair. I'm glad you agree with me, Senator Walker. No, but you're nodding and you're saying that is true, I can hear you. So we need to do something about that category of worker in the public, because they are public servants as well, they give public service. And it is not easy driving a bus down to age 67 because they will only get national insurance, So unless they go medically unfit, where they will get their pensions early, they work to 67. And trust me when I tell you, driving a bus after a certain age, when your eyes start to dim, you don't even know where the end of the road is. But you got to stick in there and hope that you don't kill nobody and reach retirement age. So there are people also who should be allowed to go home early. I know, for instance, in St. Lucia, the policeman down there, because my brother-in-law is a former policeman, and he was allowed to retire after 20 years service because he wasn't promoted to the command rank. So, you after you're 50 years old, them little fellas running around the road, you can't catch them. You think a 60-year-old policeman can catch the one fellas running the road? You go holler at him till he stop. Please stop. So we need pension reform in Barbados, and we need it very badly. And we cannot continue to have these snob arrangements in place for who we consider to be bigger ups and better offs. Because let me tell you something. The reason why most people enter politics is to, at least what they tell you, is that they want to make a difference, that they want to help the people who can help themselves. At least that is the usual thing they say when you got to interview them. But I find, in this case, that politicians have been helping themselves in terms of pension arrangements to the detriment of people who they came in and said they were coming to help. Because the people at the bottom don't get, a lot of them ain't going to go into a pension investment, anything, It is not like Senator Boyce, who will already tell you that he has three pension plans, so when he retires, he can get all kind of money. Sorry, I stand corrected. Precisely. But we have taken away from the people who need our help most. I'll give an example, and this is one the Barbers Labour Party did. There was something called the Widows and Children's Pension, widows and orphans. So if a public officer used to pay 2% of his salary towards his pension, and if he dies in office, his wife or his widow and the children under the age of majority, or if they were at university, then they went up, they used to get a pension. The Barbers Labour Party cut that out in 1980 and decided, well, if you want that kind of help, you go to national insurance. But you were already paying for national insurance, you were paying for this one, so why cut it out? Because it wasn't costing the government any lot of money. You were paying toward it, and your money was being saved and given back to your, but they cut that out. Right? You cut that out. And you abolish widows and children's pensions for public officers, but retained it for MPs and for judges and for governor general, but most governor generals don't have no children minorities, so it don't really make anything. But unfortunately, that was not in keeping with what people say they come to Parliament to do, to take care of the poor, to take care of the people who need them, who can't take care of themselves. You got rid of widows and children and kept it for yourselves. So that's what I'm saying, that we need pension reform, we need it badly, and we need to have one comprehensive pension plan for people who give public service, and not these various arrangements where you, depends upon who you think, if you feel that you are mightier, that you should get a better pension, 20 years, and some people work, and some work 1 day, some work 40 years, some work 33 and a third. The soldiers, they work 15, and they get their pension at 45. All these things, there got to be some logic to it. There got to be some fairness. So you give public service, and at the end of your service, whether it is the guy who sweep the street or the guy who passed the legislation here, it is all public service. We all cannot be MPs. We all cannot be, we all cannot be judges. We all cannot be police. But we are all given public service. So I have no difficulty now as I go through all this thing to tell you that if the Auditor General and the DPP want to go under these arrangements, I'm happy for them. And I will support the legislation. But all I am trying to do here is to show, and I wrote it down when Sandra Moore spoke about, she said, we would not want to have disparate situations. Well, my entire speech was filled with disparate situations. We need to fix it. We need to treat people the way we would like to be treated. We would want to be treated if we were in that position. You know, and that is how I plan my life and how I live my life. If you see me do something to some person, I expect that can happen to me. So treat people the way you would like to be treated, and you will never go wrong. And I don't think any MP would want to work 40 years before he gets to get a full pension. I don't think any MP would want to work 33 and a third years to get his pension. And I don't think any MP should be limping along trying to hold on to get his full pension at age 60, 65, when if it called for any physical exertion, like how the police have to do it, you know. A policeman should be at 60, 65 years old, doing this kind of hard work. You know, you should give them the opportunity to go home early, because let me tell you something, they put their lives on the line for us. You know, recently when I had my ordeal, the first thing is call the police, you know.
Did you call CJ?
No, she didn't turn up. I understand that because it was me, she didn't even turn up and visit the fellas. So they tell me. But, you know, mind you, when they had the incident at Charles, I understand the MP for that area, he turned up. And when they had the shooting in the Redmond Village, that MP also turned up. But the MP for St. Thomas didn't bother because I was there. But the thing is, I had left the next day, so she could have gone down, you know. I went to St. Lucia and was consoled and taken care of and, you know, pampered. So I was trying to get over it, and they did a good job trying to do it too, but I don't know if I find anything. She, at the beginning said that at the instance I might need Pampers, you know, but I didn't reach that point, at least not during the incident.
Senator, there is a great anomaly though affecting the political class, which I haven't heard you. Those who work 25 years as parliamentarians are only paid for 12 years. 3 terms or 12 years, whichever is the lesser.
But they get 2/3 of the maximum pension you get is 2/3. You get your 2/3. So, like for instance, if a public officer who works for 33 and 30, they get 2/3 of the pension. If he works for another 10, 15 years, you only get 2/3.
No, I'm not denying that, but I didn't think you were fair in your commentary in the political class. Because those who serve for 25 years in Parliament are only given a pension of 12 years. 3 terms or 12 years, whichever is the lesser.
But
All the time after that is not counted.
But it isn't counted because you get the maximum pension allowable. You get your maximum pension after 12 years. The other people get their maximum pension after 33 years. So you get your pension, first you get it at 17 years before anybody else. And then you get it at 12, you get it at 12 years when the other people have to hold on. So the MPs get out licking. You get it early. You know what it is to get it. As a civil servant, I have to wait till 67. As an MP, you have to wait till 50.
No, but going back 25 years, you would find that few people come to Parliament under 40. Go back 25, 30 years. I mean,
You know why, sir? That is because people like you made something of yourselves and then come to Parliament to give service.
No, I
You know,
was very early, 34.
but that time you had it made. You could afford.
No, I was
You
only working 5 years.
didn't even need a salary because at that point in time you had it made. When,
No, I was only 5 years then in public.
but you were good in those 5 years, and everybody wanted you to represent them. So
fair to the facts, someplace.
So, but you know, so you didn't, but you made something of yourself, and then you offered yourself to the public to give service to the public. I find now, sir, especially in the last administration, you had people who come to public office to see what public office can do for them. So that is why the pension arrangements has to be taken. But you, sir, Sir Louis, Sir Harold, and all people, when you came to office, you came in with something. You know, a sense of Greenwich. You know, they came in. They had money. They had resources. They didn't need this. So they came in to give service to this country. We have politicians now who come in to get a job, and a lot of them are not doing it well, you know. But the job is making something of them. In the old days, they came in and made and gave service to this country and did something for the country. It is now it has turned. The tables have turned. Dr. Walker, surgeon, he didn't need political office. If you see what I mean, he didn't need it. But check the last administration. A lot of them were unemployed, and in some cases unemployable. You know, so they had to be here. You know, they had to be here, and they fought here, even though they didn't know what the hell they were doing. And they destroyed this place through sheer incompetence. So I know why they want the pension. And they tell you, oh, I want my 2 terms. Because they're not looking to serve this country. They were looking to see what this country can do for them. You know, so it is a different era, sir. You had different types of people come into public office. Different types of people who, his grandfather, sir, he sacrificed. He was a damn good lawyer. But he came to give service to this country. And when he left, he didn't leave as any millionaire, you know. Because I remember when he died, I worked with the public trustee, and I had things I cannot discuss what I had, but I can assure you, he was not rich by any means in anybody's imagination. You know? So, but he gave service. You know? It is not happening now. And but people who give service to the best of their ability, because they are not at that level. They might be street sweepers, they might be general workers, they might whatever, but that is the best they can do. And they should be rewarded commensurately. Instead of being left to in a state of genteel poverty. Sir, I noticed that you signaled the time, and I got some more notes, but we will probably talk about this another time. I am grateful to you, sir.
Chris.
Senator Greenwich.
Yeah, he speak after me. He yielded to me. Thank you, Mr. President, for recognizing me. I want to support this amendment. And as I'm sure the people would have remarked, or they would have felt already, that this is indeed a constitutional matter. But all it deals with is the fact that the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, may now be permitted to stay on until he reaches, or she reaches, the age of 70, and the Auditor General goes at 67, full stop. It is a constitutional debate. Constitutional, sir, because this constitutional amendment deals with 2 constitutional posts. And that is what kicks this into the realm of our Constitution. In other words, sir, it is an admission that we are dealing with 2 persons whom we consider to be in a special category. This may not be a huge constitutional matter, but as I was thinking about it, I realized, Mr. President, that it did call for some reflection. To my mind, and as I reflected, Mr. President, it has to do with what we perceive as inadequate productivity after a certain age. It also has to do, sir, with diminishing returns in the workplace as we get older. So in a roundabout way, sir, I was thinking about myself, and it is indeed an acknowledgement that there are a lot of things which I could do in my young days which I cannot handle now. I am thinking, sir, about playing football, climbing a tree, and riding a bicycle.
We can think
Huh?
of much more.
among other things. So, as I said, sir, it's not a massive controversial debate. Neither do I think, sir, that it should be a controversial debate. And I was trying to see if there were any controversial points at all in a debate such as this. You know, sir, if we accept the fact that the DPP and the Auditor General are both in a special category, then the question is, Mr. President, why not make that cutoff point for both of them at 67? Or why not give both of them, allow both of them to go up to the age of 70 if they wanted to? But one seems to have a little edge over the other. And I wondered if there's any controversy in it at all. What is the magic in those two ages, 67 and 70? Is it that way the gap, that one person would be so much more active mentally than the other one? Why the difference? Why does one have to go at 67 while the other one can go at 70? And you know, so the only explanation which I could find for that upper limit of 70, which is the DPPs, is that the scope of replacement for that post may be limited, and that this is indeed a very specialized position. No, sir, let me say that I personally would have been extremely comfortable if the Auditor General had been given the possibility of those same 3 extra years as the DPP. Once upon a time, sir, the replacement for a Director of Public Prosecutions might have been a difficult proposition. But today, there are prosecutors aplenty, and good ones too, in the DPP's office.
That's a long way to 70.
Yes, you have to be. But, sir, for all we know, the Auditor General's post may be a more specialized one and a more off-the-market one than the DPPs. Indeed, sir, the Auditor General may very well be dealing with a very technical, perhaps fraudulent type of matter on his 67th birthday. And according to this amendment now, he has to walk away from it. He is not entitled to those 3 extra years being kept on. And this is not, sir, tug of war between the DPP and the Auditor General, but the way things are going in Barbados today, I must confess that I have a sore spot for that position of Auditor General. Because, sir, we are striving day by day to stamp out corruption in high places in Barbados. He says high and low. High and low places in Barbados. And the Auditor General is more than a figurehead. His work has become more difficult. His work has become more demanding. And he is not only, I heard Senator Moore use the term, only the watchdog type. This is not only a watchdog type post. that people seem to have termed it. He has a lot of work to do. He's doing some, and I could tell you, for the way things are going, he has a lot more to do too. You know, sir, without doubt, there has to be a cutoff age in the public service. There has to be a point where you have to look at people and say, you have had enough, it's time to go. If you don't do this, sir, I know personally, I know of persons who would want to come to work, sir, in a wheelchair or in a wheelbarrow. Because that is what they know. For some of them, that work is the only thing they know. Working in that particular office, sir, is the only life they have. Some of them seem to have no social life whatsoever. I have known of people who even after they were retired, they went to work and sat down at their desk. And if you don't tell them at some point enough is enough, they will continue to go, even if they can't work, they can't raise a pension. Yeah, clutter up the place. You know, so this raises another issue. And that issue, sir, is succession planning. Successive governments in Barbados, the Bs and the Ds, have paid scant regard to succession planning in many departments throughout our public service. There should never be massive voids in our government departments. And there are too many, even now as I speak, I can think of so many of them. I know, sir, of workers who actually retired from certain departments and had to be recalled and paid a salary in addition to their pensions. I hope you understand that, sir. Paid a salary in addition to their pensions, all because no one was readily available to fill that slot that they had left. I know, sir, of one occasion in a ministry, a particular ministry, I had responsibility for it at one stage, where 4 persons of senior rank, 4 people at the top, retired around the same time, and there was no one ready to take over from them. No one was being groomed for succession. And sir, our retirement age, by and large, in our public service is now 67. But sir, a debate such as this sends a strong message to our young people in the public service, as well as those young people in public enterprise. Our young people, sir, should start planning for their retirement in their 20s and in their 30s. Start planning as early as possible. Sir, as you were saying, sir, hear that from their first paycheck. Sir, I know that it calls for a lot of discipline, but discipline should never be an obstacle when you're thinking about your future. In the early stages of their career, sir, young people should put aside a little something for a rainy day. Put aside a little something for their future. Some young people, sir, And this, I must admit, is not public service, but the young people I know in private enterprise, they are known, sir, to have complained because of getting $1,000 in their hand, they only got 900, and did not understand the significance of that other $100 going towards a pension plan for their future benefit. They did not understand that significance. It was if he robbing me. He taking up $100 every month, every week. They didn't understand it. Saw this as taking away money to do something which they could not understand, which they did not appreciate. And so they did not understand the idea of having an account where there were deposits only. This account, deposits only, and no withdrawals until they reach a certain age. They just did not appreciate that. They couldn't imagine it happening. And their attitude was to me, and perhaps it still is, who tell you that I will live to see 70? If I reach 70, 70 will look after itself. But sir, perhaps it is not the fault of the young people, you know. Maybe, sir, it's the fault of people like you and me, sir. Maybe the fault is ours. Because we must educate our young people, our youth, as to what retirement means and what it entails. I have known young people, sir, who opted for early retirement only to find out that the pittance, the little pittance they got, could not cover their post-work expenses. Couldn't cover their post-work expenses, but still they gone and they retired. And they were not even close to that 67 when they retired. I heard Senator Franklin refer to that kind of thing as being put into genteel poverty, but they put themselves into it. But if we go back to the older folks, 67, so when our senior public servants are compulsorily retired at 67, sir, they have acquired and they still possess a lot of knowledge. Some of them, perhaps, to me, the brains are, to me, at the best. I can think of 2 or 3 permanent secretaries who retired, and when they retired, they were really, really sharp. Real sharp. And many of them still believe that when they leave the public service, that they have to do things to keep that brain of theirs as active as possible. I don't know if you recall, sir, but I do remember when I was going to school, headmaster from my district, I didn't give you any indication that he was going to call the name, but sir, with your permission, I'll say Mr. Murrell he was, from Marleyville. He used to catch the bus with me, a retired headmaster, to go. I was a little schoolboy, and he would get onto the bus. And he was going to the modern high school to teach. Because when he finished teaching, being a principal at St. Mark's, he wanted something to do with that mind of his. And he, and with 2 or 3 other principals that I've heard of, taught at the modern high school. There were some old headmasters and teachers, senior teachers, who taught at the federal high school. Because at that stage, you know, you're looking for something And the best thing you can do is what you are accustomed to doing, which is teaching. But it is not surprising to me that today a lot of our retirees, deputy PSs, they find employment in the private sector after leaving the public service, and particularly in that human resources section, they find employment. There are some too, again, I wouldn't call names, but people like myself and Senator Rogers, we would know of people who left the public service and they had a religious calling. Who mean? No, you're talking about Alan Jones and CVS Bell. Teach first and not me. Huh? No, that is anyhow. No. The point is, sir, that at 67, in the same way they can go and make a company as successful as possible, at 67 they can still drive this country forward. They can still do things to help Barbados. And I have held the view too, sir, that retired civil servants with all of that experience should be encouraged by government to serve on boards. They should be encouraged by governments to carry out studies, to be part of think tanks, and to do other things which would employ their minds. And so let me make the point that in today's world, 67 is young. 67 is still a young age in today's world. Today, sir, many, if not most, of the persons I see going on cruises, they're 70 years and over. 70 years and over, then they're going on cruises, they're enjoying themselves. I know a lady from St. Philip, sir, who works in New York. And about, I don't know if she's still doing it, but about 3 years ago, when I spoke to her, having come home here on a holiday, she was still working in a library in New York, and she was 92. She was still working in a library in New York, and she was 92 years old. Sir, I am convinced that maybe in the 60s, I go there, people used to show age and people used to get older more quickly, to me. And sir, conditions such as those NCDs, non-communicable diseases, which used to be a death sentence, they're now treatable. People are living longer, they're living more healthy lives. And governments around the world, Mr. President, are confronting this problem by pushing upwards the age of retirement. And employees are opting to work longer because it is a win-win situation where the employee gets to work longer and government still gets some productivity in return. And I do believe, sir, and I agree with Senator Franklin, that we need to have, I agree, one comprehensive pension plan. Because at some stage, sooner or later too, in fact, sooner rather than later, there must be a close analysis and a close examination of government's pension costs. We have to do that at some stage. Because, sir, to say that it is high is to me an understatement. We have to do something about it. Mr. President, I, like my friend Mr. Franklin, still have a few things that I could say, but I can't say all. I am in full agreement with you. And so I am very grateful to you for having given me the opportunity, sir. And I end just where it began, which is that I do support the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. And the next recognized, Senator Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it seems as though we've all stood to speak and declared our hand at the beginning, so I'll declare mine. I do support this bill, and I do support this amendment. And Mr. President, when I spoke on the QEH amendment, I said that this government was an action government to allow thumps on the table. And it is an action government. And I'm pleased that this government has chosen to correct some of the things that it did wrong before. This bill, Mr. President, was debated in the House of Assembly in July 2016. And the contents of this bill today are no different from then. The outcome of the vote was different. And the bill was therefore reintroduced in the lower house last week and passed without debate. Mr. President, it says that there is no wrong time to do the right thing. So I congratulate the government. I believe that this constitutional amendment is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do, Mr. President. And if one takes the time to read the documents in the Hansard from that debate, it lays out how the then Prime Minister, the Honorable Frendell Stewart, gave an excellent historical account of these posts and laid out a case for this amendment. But it also provided tremendous high-level debate when the then leader of the opposition laid out various reasons why government would abstain in its vote, and it did. The Right Honorable Owen Seymour Arthur, I think he sat then as an independent, laid out strong reasons why he felt that this was a serious debate and why government should, or the opposition then, should have voted with the government. That's all passed. And Mr. President, we've now come full circle. Senator Franklin, spoke extensively about some of the wrongs within the Pensions and Gratuities Act. And Senator Greenidge pointed out that our government is simply harmonizing many of the little areas that have been left unfinished when the retirement age for public servants became 67. Now, workplace productivity has changed, and despite the NCDs and Alzheimer's, people are living longer and are being productive for many, many more years. And we have to make sure that as we change the legislation, that we do not disadvantage individuals. Now, Mr. President, I want to speak specifically about why we're here. And we're here because we are about to vote and we are debating a bill which seeks to amend the Constitution to right a long-standing, right a wrong. And while I think it was Senator Greenidge who spoke of the role of the Auditor General, we have to make sure that when one looks for wrongdoing, and wrongdoing is a two-way street. It can't just be wrongdoing on matters that need to be referred to the PSC, but it has to be wrongdoing also, and if government is disadvantaging its employees. And that previous debate was really warmed up when the then Leader of Opposition, now Prime Minister, the Honorable Mayor Amor Motley, questioned who was a civil servant and who was a public servant. And I would like to encourage everyone in this chamber to read it. It speaks, Mr. President, to the fact that all civil servants are public servants, but not all public servants are civil servants. And we are treated differently. Now, on the matter of pensions and gratuities, and I can speak from experience, I am a public servant, but I'm not a civil servant. I'm a contracted officer where I work in another place. In 2011, the government of the day came to Parliament and amended the Pensions and Gratuities Act. Immediately after, allowances became taxable. And the formula for calculating gratuities of civil servants, or rather public servants, was changed. That formula has now been applied to PSs and all other persons who are civil servants, but it has not been applied to public servants who are employees of statutory corporations. Most of us in here might have read Animal Farm, and there was a character called Squealer. And when I read Animal Farm for the first time, I was 13, and it was a nice book. And then I read it for the second time when I was 18, and I realized it wasn't what I thought it was at 13. And I've subsequently read it again for the third time. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. If, however, all animals are equal, we should treat them all equally. And I'm standing in this chamber and calling upon those responsible to correct the injustice. You cannot expect to treat persons who are at the same level of S grade in the civil service differently when it comes to their pensions and gratuity based on personal interpretation. The time will come, Mr. President, where these matters will be challenged in a higher place, and it is not too far away. It is not too far away. It's the source of tremendous unhappiness, discontent, and lack of productivity. I will ignore the aside. Mr. President, I am pleased that in 2020, we've come around to doing what is right, and I'm sure that this government will continue to correct the injustices and correct some of its mistakes. And this one, Mr. President, has been long overdue, and it's the right thing to do, and I support it, and I will vote in its favor, Mr. President. I'm obliged to you.
You need to wind up now.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have taken note and listened to all of the views expressed today by my colleague senators, and certainly I've noted with quite some interest some of the opinions. I will say that with regard to the comment made that we need to, and I quote, fix it. Like many other parts of government, it needs to be fixed. Now, I agree. There are many parts of government that need to be fixed. Certainly, this government, when they came into government, and I wouldn't want to belabor the point as to all of the issues that we faced. They're well known, and many and myriad problems confronting us, whether economic, whether legislative reforms, whether health and safety in the workplace. I could go on and on and on. No buses, no water, sewage in the streets. It doesn't make sense to me going over these things over and over and over again. 'Cause all of Barbados could see it for themselves. I mean, if you live like me in Christchurch and you're driving on the road and sewage in the streets, you can't help but see it. But you're not seeing that now. You're not seeing that now. You know, we're trying to fix it, as was said by Senator Franklin, I think it was. And this is yet another issue that we are trying to fix. We fixed one this morning, and we're back here to fix one again now. But as you said, this is a complex issue. And yes, there are some areas that may not be synonymous. And maybe, I think the word that we both used was disparate. Nevertheless, you have to start with any issue somewhere. There has to be a beginning to get to an end. So I would not want to come in here and suggest that this is the end of all of the issues, whether they're pension related or otherwise, that exist and that we're trying to fix. But I wouldn't want to be accused, certainly this government will not want to be accused of rushing in here and just rushing things and not taking our time to do it correctly and starting somewhere to get somewhere else. Now, having said that, yes, we're here asking for this amendment in order to ensure that the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Auditor General will come in line with other public servants with the retirement pensionable age of 67. And was rightly said, I think, by Senator Greenidge, that in the case of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, under certain conditions, may go on to 70. Very similar to what happens now with judges and other people like that. Having said that, I just want to say that this issue, like many others that we have faced, when one looks at it, you have to look at it and see what needs to be done and ensure that what is done in a manner that is fair and a manner that does not advantage or disadvantage an individual. And I think that this does just that. Now, I listened to Senator Franklin on the issue of, and my colleague Senator Greenidge on the issue of gratuities and the like. I don't want to be here today to discuss, which can become a very involved and lengthy issue of gratuities. But like I said, there were many issues faced by us, and we do intend to continue to go on the correct path of ensuring that these issues are resolved, and this is one such. Now, certainly, I listened carefully to the discussion about age of productivity, whether it's 50, 60, 70. I don't think that one can say that there's an age nowadays that is where one cannot be productive. Modern science, medical science, and improvements in all kinds of technology and areas, and medicine is one such area where there have been tremendous improvements every single year. People are living longer. People are not dying as young as they used to. If you go and speak to an association like the Barbados Association of Retired Persons or the Ministry of Gender Affairs, or any area in Barbados where they deal with elderly people, people are living longer. They're living longer. And why they're living longer? Science has improved. Medicine has improved. The skills of doctors they're 3 in here. I'm sure that they would agree that things have improved where people are living longer. So, sorry, 3 medical and 2 non-medical. Let me correct myself. For accuracy, let me correct myself. 3 medical and 2 non-medical, and 3 non-medical doctors. But nevertheless, we could just look at countries around us. We have a country not too far from us that we interact with all the time. A lot of Bajans go there, where the president of that country is over 70. The 2 people challenging him are the 2 front runners in one of the political parties challenging him. They are both over 70, and they're the front runners, and they're both over 70. So I think that should say something to you. To the fact that Senator Greenidge, that certainly anyone approaching 70 or over 70, there's 0 reason for them not to be productive as long as they have their health. And we know there are many 70-year-olds more than competent. Otherwise, we could not have the people of 70 running countries of this world, and have run countries of this world, and certainly are now wanting to become the leaders of a very well-known country that many Barbadians like to visit, and not far from us. So productivity and age certainly is an area in today's world that you see, so when we talk about people retiring at 67 and in certain circumstances going on to 70, that's not untoward. Certainly not when you compare what happens elsewhere. So, but let's get back to the central issue that we're here for, and that is simply to make this very serious amendment that will bring these 2 individuals in line with other persons within the public service. So, Mr. President, we are here asking and hoping that everyone will agree with this constitutional amendment, Bill 2020, and that the sections that we're looking to amend, the compulsory age of retirement for the Auditor General and the Director of Public Prosecutions, should be harmonized with the retirement age and the National Insurance Scheme, as is the case of other public officers, and that the Constitution of Barbados be thus amended to affect this change to the compulsory age of retirement of the Auditor General and the Director of Public Prosecutions. And as I said to my fellow senators when I first got up to speak, this is certainly something that we need to do in order to not have variations within one aspect of our law, and a variation in another aspect of the law that affects an individual where there is a gap between their retirement age and their pension eligibility requirement. And with that, Mr. President, I would like to move that this bill now be read a second time. A third time. Second time. A second time.
Question is, consideration, be now read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. After you do no leave.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that you know the chair and the Senate resolve itself as a committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that I do now leave the chair, and the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate for the further consideration of this bill in detail. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it, and we are now in committee.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Report.
Mr. President, I beg to move that you now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
I did the other thing.
Passing committee. Chairman has reported to me the passes of the bill under consideration in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill now be read a third time.
Question is that the bill under consideration be now read a third time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do now pass and be cited as the Constitutional Amendment Act 2020.
Question is that this bill do now pass and be so cited. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no.
Senator Walcott. Aye. Senator Moore.
Aye.
Senator McConney.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Springer.
Aye.
Senator Dr. Holder.
Aye.
Senator Haynes.
Aye.
Senator Sands. Senator Adams. Senator Franklin.
Aye.
Senator Drix.
Aye.
Senator Reverend Rogers.
Aye.
Senator Wiggins. Senator Boyce. Senator Maynard. Your Honor, Senator Greenwich.
Aye.
Mr. President, 15 honorable senators voted in favor of the bill, ensuring that the two-thirds majority as required by Section 49(2) of the Constitution has been met.
Results,
None voted against.
none against, none abstained. 15.
Those who are following us on the radio should be pointed out that this is a constitutional amendment, and to that extent, we needed a two-thirds majority. 15 honorable members have voted in favor, none against. So the bill is now passed and will be cited as the Constitutional Amendment Act 2020. Thank you.
Today's sitting.
Mr. President, I beg to move that today's sit, that brings us to the end
Today's business.
of today's business, and that we adjourn sine die.
Question is that this session be now adjourned before the day appointed. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Take the ayes have it. This session is now adjourned. So we've been given notice of the next one before the day appointed. Thank you.